Today's project, we're going to take our traditional LIONEL 681 and install a smoke unit that's made specifically to use liquid smoke fluid. And then we're going to have some time to run the trains and test it out. And thank you, of course, always to Roger Karp for featuring our layout in classic toy trains. And we have changed the layout so many times since then. And if you order from trains.com, trains with a Z, it's a one-time thing. You mention my promo code is WindyU. You will get $10 off your first order over $50. It's a pretty good deal. I think you'll enjoy doing business with trains. Now, we're using a 681 turbine, but this would apply to almost every LIONEL steam engine from that era. They almost all use very similar smoke units, similar in a lot of ways, but the new ones are a lot better. So today, the job is going to be that we're going to change out the smoke unit to a more modern one that we got from trains.com, trains with a Z. And relatively simple job, so we should be done with enough time left over to run the trains for a while. So step one is I always look at the box to see if there's any damage to the box. Remember, we live in a New York City area, so once in a while, it's thing they throw the box up on a porch or whatever. But so far, all of the stuff, all the deliveries I've gotten from trains.com have been perfect. So maybe I'm lucky, because Karen with her stuff has not been so lucky all the time. And there we are. There's the new smoke unit, nicely packed, and with the little, if we ever have to return it, of course, we'll save that. And that's what you get for 20 bucks. And it's a relatively straightforward job to replace it. Now, I've heard people that use smoke fluid in the old units with some mixed results, but I wanted to get this unit. This is made specifically for liquid smoke fluid. Now, if you have a 681 and for some reason you've never taken it apart or changed your headlight bulb, it's a very easy engine to work on. You need a flat blade screwdriver to push the nose out. I try to be real careful not to put any unnecessary damage on it. The nose comes right off like so, and we put this aside for now. Now we can turn it over. 3 screws hold the shell on, and we can take the shell right off. Again, this part is pretty straightforward, and what I like about all the trains in my collection from this era, and I have a few, they are very easy to maintain, very easy to work on, and parts are still available. And when you have something that's really high-tech, of course, sometimes you have to pay somebody to work on it. You have to pay somebody like Train Doctor, and they do a great job, by the way. They've worked on my stuff in the past, but a job like this, I think you certainly can do yourself. These are just for reference. The 2 longer screws go in the back, just in front of the back truck. The small one goes right in the nose section. And once you have that done, relatively straightforward. Again, what makes working on these and maintaining them and keeping them like brand new relatively easy. And now we can work, obviously, the smoke units up in the front, or if you had to replace the light bulb or anything like that. So once we have that apart, obviously the light bulb, if it in time has gotten a little loose, sometime the light will flicker. I've had that happen. This is grounded, of course, to the chassis, so you only need the 1 wire, and the bulbs are easy to replace. The smoke unit, it has a connection up here on the E unit. Now, I don't like to fool around with that connection. I don't like to, it's just easier for me to cut the wire and splice the wire in. And the new unit will come with a ground wire. We can attach the ground wire to the front screw or to any place that we're going to ground it to the chassis. So the first thing is, right now, is to take the old smoke unit out. Now, I always like to pass on what I think are really, really useful tips. This is a really good one, by the way. These are available. I got these at the local dollar store. It's $1, or sometimes the dollar stores now are $1.25. For these are oversized Q-tips, and I want to show this because this, in the course of, I like to keep my trains well oiled, well cleaned, nicely maintained, whatever. And these go a long way. Obviously, there's a lot of uses for them. But this is a product, I've never seen anybody do a video on this, but this is something that's really worthwhile, and I'll show what it's usable for. Now, on some of my trains, and to be honest, let me get an ordinary Q-tip just to show the difference. So let's get these out of the way, and you can see this is several times the size. Now, what it's useful for, anytime I take a motorcycle apart, I work on old motorcycles all the time. I have a 100-plus-year-old house. Everything I work on is old and dirty. So this is what, now I don't even have to get my hands dirty to do this. I can just spend a little time that I normally would have a cup of coffee here and just clean this up. You can clean the wheels on the trains with these, clean the tracks. Up here there's always some grease from oil on the front truck. And it's just, these are one of the really handy things that I found for doing your own maintenance on your own trains. Now, since this video is obviously aimed at helping people that are maybe new to trains, this is called the E-unit. There's the screws that hold it on, a screw. You need to every once in a while, because this does from time to time get loose, but you don't want to really over tighten it and strip the material. This is 70-year-old material, and I don't want to take a chance on stripping it, but even if I did, replacing it with a new E-unit, what's nice about this, all of the parts for these older locomotives are available. And these are iconic locomotives. Almost everybody that had trains when they were younger, and I'm 78 years old, would have some, either one of these or a Berkshire or something really like it if you had trains when you were a child. Another thing is always, while you have it apart, anytime you have it apart, golden rule, just give everything a nice little tightening, and not to ever super tighten something. Especially if you take the motor apart, and we'll be in the future doing a video on rebuilding a motor. These screws, if you over tighten them, you can crack the Bakelite. It's 70-year-old or plus Bakelite. And what happens, it's really hard to fix it. I know people have done it with JB Weld and with whatever, but again, if you did break it, all of the parts of the motor, including a whole motor, are available. And thanks to all the people that keep these old parts in circulation, that we can keep these old guys on the tracks. And in the front of the smoke unit, you'll see there's one screw, takes the whole smoke unit off of the engine. Now, another little trick may be useful. I take a lot of my older screwdrivers and just grind them on a grindstone so that they're not as thick as I have to show this. And they get into little tight spots. This happens to be one of them, not one of them, but they will get, it makes it a lot easier to get them in spots that if you're not wearing your glasses or whatever. Once we take that screw out, whoa, and that's the old smoke unit. So of course, to explain to a person that's never taken a 681 or an old locomotive apart, this is how old LIONEL smoke units work. This little arm goes up and down. Inside the smoke unit, this is like a little piston and sleeve. And what that does, it makes puffs every time the wheel turns. It sends out a puff of smoke. Now, it's very easy to figure out how this works, and believe it or not, even after 70 years, you can get smoke out of this. But the thing is, with the new units, you can use the liquid, a lot more convenient, and I think, I haven't bought smoke pellets in many years. I think it's even cheaper in the long run to do it that way. But so you have the piston, and this has got a light coating of oil on it. I don't think that's necessary. It'll work either way. So the next step on this, again, relatively simple. I want to cut this wire. You really could unsolder that joint and everything, but I think this is just the lesser of two evils. Now, I don't want to cut it up close, so if I have to, when I strip the wire, if I miss the cut or I don't get a good joint there, I can do it 2 or 3 more times. So usually I'll cut it right in the middle. And now I have the smoke unit in one piece off in my hand. Okay, so here's the old one. You notice the new one, and it basically doesn't matter which one of those 2 wires you connect to the old wire, but the other one, you have to make a ground wire out of it. We'll make a little ground connection. And they don't give you a new piston. You have to use the old piston over. So just make sure, of course, that it doesn't have any resistance or anything. It shouldn't. These are pretty reliable when you get them. Now, one of the things you can do if you really want to be super careful is you can get down in there. This is riding up on a cam lobe. And you can get the needle down in there and get just one drop of oil on that. And it'll just let that ride up and down a little bit smoother. Another thing, while you have this apart, is a little cover, and it goes down by the worm gear. There's a worm gear, and it'll make it run a lot smoother and quieter if you get a drop or two of some good quality grease down in there. Again, all the little maintenance things just make for a... It's 70 years old now, and I think for sure it's going to outlive me, but wow, it's just nice. There's a little right here, just things a new person to the hobby might not know. You can put a drop or two of oil in there. That's always a good little maintenance to do. Once we get it all back together, I would oil all the oiling points one by one. I do that when it's all put together. And just as a final thing, before we go up to the layout. Now you have to make sure, and I checked, that I don't have any interference on that little piston. And actually I can put a little drop of grease on there too. That would help. Let me just put a drop of grease. And I over maintain all my trains, and I got to just fit the screw in there and we'll be good to solder up the wires. And next step is just to strip off a little bit of this. Leave some bare wire there. This does not have a shield on it, and we just have to get those two to connect together. And another little item I found handy for working on trains. The shrink tubes are the size that we normally would use for doing this type of electronics, from going over couplers and joints to the real small ones you need if you're working on something like a Mike's Train House engine. The little ones, the medium ones. This whole thing was very inexpensive, and I've used it over and over and over again anytime I'm working on any of the wiring on the trains. Now, as I'm putting the heat shrink tubing on, I realized I should have made this an inch longer, and it's a good thing you can pick up off the video. And I would only need one solder joint. I need two, as it turns out to be, but it's not really, it won't really matter. Or in some cases you would want to connect this, but I don't like touching that soldering joint. I don't know why. I just get I get bad feelings whenever you touch a 70-year-old soldering joint. But I made up a little jumper wire, and I'll solder this in, and then I just have to hook up the ground, and we'll be ready to test it. Now, I'm for sure not the world's greatest solderer, but this gun was $3 in Harbor Freight. The solder was $3. So for $6, now I have the heavy-duty soldering gun, and I did plumbing work. I have the real heavy one that you heat with a torch. But to work on these type of things, and the trick is always get some solder on each side of the wire before you try to solder it. And sometimes it can be a little snippy to do this, but in the end you'll get a really good connection. I was surprised how cheap these soldering irons are, and once I started using this I said, wow, it is really a handy thing to have. So I try to always, on any of my videos, whether it's a motorcycle video, a train video, or whatever, always include anything that I found to be handy for a tip or a source. And I try not to leave out steps. But once I melt this, then I'll do the other end, and we're ready to put the heat shrink tubing on. Now I made a little ground wire up, and we'll attach that to the bottom of the smoke unit. And the material, you can pry this off, of course, when you go to change the material. It's the same material in a modern Lionel or Mike's Train House smoke unit, that fiberglassy kind of material. And all I want to do now, once I get this bolted in, I want to heat the shrink tubing with a heat gun, and we'll be ready to do a final test. Now, a lot of people use a match. You can use a heat gun, you can use a hairdryer on this tubing. It works great. So there's the final little connection, since nothing critical there. Very easy to do, and that should allow the smoke unit to work. We'll do a continuity test. Good continuity there, and I always like to just double check. Always double checking before I go put everything back together and go up to the layout. So the final little detail, and another thing I have done in the past, and it's really, I have worked on a smoke unit. On the old-fashioned ones, you used to clean them out with a scraper and everything, and I'd forget to put the little piston in, and if the little piston isn't in there, you're not going to get a lot of smoke coming out. The little felt washer you reuse from the original. And now the trick is to get the E unit right in the middle. Be real careful. You have to thread the bulb through. You don't want to squash or break or bend anything, and you want that washer to line up just perfectly. Now before you flip it over, you want to make sure that you haven't taken that felt washer and made that you're covering up the smoke element, the little resistor there. If you can see the resistor, you're pretty much good to put the screws back in, and it's ready to go make some smoke. Now you've got to be careful because this part slides on this, and a lot of times, in this case, this is one of them, where the wires are, you can pinch the wires or make a problem for yourself. So let's see if we can do it this way. Now, we've got to be able to get it started. Get that down in there. Get the bulb in place. There it is, and I want the bulb right up on top so I get the brightest possible headlight. That looks like it's going to be good. We press the front end in, and we're all set to go. Now we have to prime the smoke unit. I usually use 20 drops. That seems like a lot. Run it for a few minutes. When the smoke volume goes way down, then put 10 to 15 drops in. You really don't need more than that. You'll know you have too much if it splatters all over the outside of the smokestack, and you can use those little Q-tips, of course, to clean it up. Let's run the trains. Now those big Q-tips are handy for another thing. When you spill a little smoke fluid like I did on this and get it off the engine. Let's give this a test. Now right from the get-go I can see we've got good smoke volume, and it's just reminiscent of the original Lionel, how they used to smoke with the pellets, and only now you can buy the fluid and you can buy the scented fluid. My wife likes the cinnamon fluid. I won't speculate. But anyway, the smoke is really, the volume is great, and it's a lot more fun to run the trains. Now tonight we're just going to run the 681. Normally in a run session like this, we would run a lot more, change the consists up, change the train, change the engine, diesel, steam, whatever. Some traditional ones and some modern ones with the sound system. We run them all, we enjoy them all, and our 681 is always a lot of fun to run. I'm really satisfied that this was a great investment of 20 bucks. It's going to allow me a lot of flexibility of what smoke fluid I can use. Never have to buy those pellets again, which is always annoying. Now on our channel, we always try to share, and our channel has over 3,000 videos. We try to share little maintenance tips, not high-tech stuff. We leave all the high-tech stuff to the trained doctor, and I put his contact information early in the video. They are really good people at Trained Doctor, and they have rescued me from many, many things with the very complicated engines, with the electronics and the sound system. But an engine like the 681, you can do to reality, you can do most of the work yourself. So I hope you did enjoy the video. The tips are useful, and you enjoy your trains as much as I enjoy mine. I post up a video every time I have a running session at the house, either alone or with friends, or in this case with my grandson. And this layout is 25 years old, and I have posted videos from 25 years ago and from just recently, and they're all fun to look at. Check out the channel, and please, if you like the video, hit the like button. And thank you guys one and all. Thanks so much for watching.